Hi, I'm Allie, and I'm living chronic faith. Thanks for stopping by, and welcome to the podcast. The name says it all. I believe that our faith has to be as chronic as our symptoms, and this podcast is a safe space for us to explore meaningful ways to live our lives according to that faith. It's my prayer that after this episode, you will be more encouraged, more educated, and more equipped to live out your chronic faith. Hello, I'm Allie, and welcome to the Living Chronic Faith podcast. Thank you so much for joining us. Today, I am honored to have with us a wonderful young lady, a beautiful spirit, and just someone who is doing so much in the space of disability advocacy. She is a creative, and she is a believer, and I am delighted to introduce to you Tameka Citchens-Spruce. Welcome, and thank you for joining us.
Yes, hello. Thank you for inviting me.
Oh my goodness, it is a pleasure to have you. I would love for you just to start off by telling us a little bit about yourself and why you have found yourself in the disability advocacy space.
Yes, just a little bit about me. I am a disability justice activist, also independent film producer, and national speaker. I'm also a mom of two and a wife. And so here I reside in Detroit, Michigan. And just really how I got into this disability advocacy space and, into filmmaking is that really I always growing up with my physical disability. I have a spinal cord injury, so I'm paralyzed from the upper mid chest and down. And growing up with a spinal cord injury, and then on top of it, be, a black girl, I really had to advocate for myself, for my needs, and what I wanted out of life. The first taste of the advocacy started when I was 12 years old. I advocated for myself to be mainstreamed full time, which means that I wanted to be in the classroom full time with my peers, not in the special ed classroom, because up to that time it was half the day, especially half the day. In mainstream. So, that got tested. I was able to do that. But it was a pivotal time, though, that I knew that after I did that, other just physically disabled students, start going into their own district and being mainstream full time as well after I spoke up. So, yeah, that's kind of like my first taste of self disability advocacy.
That is such a common way for many of us who have gotten into this space that we have that lived experience where we found that we needed to speak up for ourselves and maybe recognize that there were others around us that also needed to have a voice and maybe didn't have that support or didn't have that confidence or that experience to speak up. And so being able to step in and fill that gap, which is part of my journey to purpose, uh, having been diagnosed and recognizing those things that I had experienced and things that may be helpful to other people. What do you believe is God's purpose for your life, and how did you discover that, and then how did you embrace it?
Yes. I believe that God's purpose for my life is to, show people that it doesn't matter, if you have a disability or whatever, that you have to overcome, societal pressures or stereotypes or misconceptions, that you can still do what God, intended your purpose to do, that those, societal pressures can't stop you from what God has for you to do. So for me, I think that looks like using, my talents So goes back to like the parable of the talents. What did God give you? And so I, believe that I really have a talent of storytelling and using media. And so that's what I really like, to do is to tell bold, stories in an unapologetic way of, the disability community, women, girls, and black and brown communities. Also using, my voice as well in the form of, advocacy to, make society better for myself and then for of course for other people. So that's those are like kind of like my talents, per se. So I just want to do that for the glory of God and to help others. And so how I came into that is that I always felt even since a small child a sense of purpose because first of all how I survived a traumatic car accident, and so when I was a baby that's how I became paralyzed. And so I knew from a young age that I wasn't if it wasn't meant for me to be here, I would not be here. Also, as I shared with you, I had severe asthma attacks. And so, but by the grace of God, He blessed me so I wasn't I didn't need to go through those, severe asthma attacks like before. So just those type of instances of, God showing me like, okay, you have a purpose and you're here for a reason. And so, you gotta do it, So I'm very determined and persistent person because, I know that it's not by accident that I'm here.
I think that that's something that we need to really highlight and lift up for people. That the fact that we are here is an indication that God has a purpose for our lives. And I think sometimes when people have new limitations and are not able to do things that they were able to do previously, it's difficult to understand or to know what to do when you can't do what you've always done. And when you felt fulfillment in what you were doing previously, and now that's no longer an option, it can feel like, okay, well, then what do I do when that thing is gone? But just what you said, leaning into the understanding that if God has you here, it's for a reason, and to allow ourselves to make that our pursuit, that pursuit of God's reason for us and His purpose for us. It may not look like what it looked like before. It may
Exactly.
not be something that, we're even familiar with. It may be something brand new. But I appreciate what you said that I'm here and God has a plan for me. And we know that the plan that He has for us is a very good plan. And so I'm
Yes,
grateful that
yes,
you shared.
yes. Yes, yes, yeah, yeah, definitely. God always, have a plan, and you may not understand it. Like I don't know why. I mean, I know why, but the purpose or that became paralyzed. There's a lot of people. Of course, that's walking around, and and it just happens. But I what helped me is like questioning like why me or why did this happen or trying to wrestle with the purpose is what Romans 8:28 that whatever the devil meant for bad God can turn it around for good for those, who love him according to his purpose. So you may not understand why, or there might not be a reason, just life happens. But just trust and know that, it can be turned around and something good can come out of it.
Yeah. Yeah. It's really easy to focus on the harder parts, the difficult parts, the parts that we would love to change, I think sometimes we get distracted and we focus on that. But I'm reminded of, as you speak about that, I'm reminded of John chapter 9, where Jesus and the disciples came across a man who was born blind, and they were asking who sinned that he ended up blind. And Jesus explained to them, this is because he wanted the world to see God's glory through this individual. And I think that that's such a powerful imagery and a perspective that we all need to really claim for ourselves and take ownership of, that the thing that sometimes is so stigmatized and the thing that we sometimes resent and we regret or whatever have you is the thing that really can be the reflection of God's glory into the world, the thing that will point others to him and his greatness and his faithfulness in our lives. And so that being said, this is one of the things that we get to share with the world. This is one of the ways that we get to represent him and be a witness for him. And that is one of the big things that you do. And you mentioned sharing bold stories unapologetically. And I want to get into it because that word is such a big part of what you do and how you represent this community. What does it mean to live out God's purpose for your life unapologetically?
I believe it really comes down to that not have to apologize. And then the word, not apologize for taking up space for, you know, being here and doing what, God called you to do. You shouldn't have to apologize for that. You get what I'm saying? So that looks like, so sometimes I know based upon my experience, either, in the church or in the world, that people have perceptions of who you are and just based upon your looks. So if you have somebody with, like me, who uses a wheelchair, or you might have somebody that's blind, or who's hard of hearing or deaf, or especially some type of like a physical disabilities, people already have a perception of
Mm-hmm.
your life, of who you are, you know, and so it's like you always have to, fight against that. Like, no, you think that I, have a woe is me personality, or I'm this or that, the other, but I'm married. Have kids. I, have, a business. I, what I'm saying. I have talents. I can serve. I can, what I'm saying. So it's like, when it comes to living out God's purpose, not have to reduce yourself or feel like you have to little yourself down. But no, when it comes to doing God's will, do it, boldly. Do it, take up as much space as you need and show them that
Yeah.
yes, this is what God has called me to do. I do have talents, I do have value, I do have worth. God can use me just like He can use you, and don't let your preconceived notions, you know, dictate how you treat me or how you look at me. Look at me how God
Yes.
sees me. And I think that's particularly in the church, that's what we have to start doing, is looking at each other, and especially those who are from marginalized communities, as God would see them, or Jesus would
Mm-hmm.
see them, not as society, or the world would see people.
Amen.
Yeah.
That's so true. I find that for me, when I have in the past not seen myself that way, it was because I was comparing myself to someone else. And in that way, I was buying into some of those popular ideologies that the world has, that society says about what the standard should be, what we should look like, how we should present, what we should be able to do at a certain point in our lives. And the reality is, we were all created different.
Yeah.
None of us was made to be exactly like someone else. And so when we find ourselves, uh, to use your word, being apologetic, it typically comes from the fact that we think that we're supposed to be like someone else. And so I appreciate that you bring out looking at what the Word of God says about us. How does God see us? And He sees us as His image bearers. And so if that's the case, then what is there to apologize for? I love to go back to Ephesians 2:10 that declares that we are His workmanship, which suggests intentionality in the way that we were designed and created, that there are no mistakes. And that extends even, I would say, to those who acquire disabilities or who acquire diagnoses later in life. And I think that that's really, a different kind of challenge for someone who has, had maybe a career or maybe had a family before they acquired their diagnosis. When everything changes, how do you navigate that space? And so, my question for you would be, what would you tell other people who are living with disabilities or chronic illnesses that are seeking God's purpose for their lives, that maybe don't quite know what that is at this point, post, acquiring that diagnosis, or even as they have compared themselves to other people? What would you say to someone who is seeking God's purpose and haven't quite figured out how to walk it out?
Yeah, so I would say that for one, you have to shift the thinking that productivity equals value. That that
Mm,
that's
that's good.
the number one thing, because you know that you are valuable. I am valuable inherently because of who I am in God. You get what I'm saying? In Jesus, as far as your
Hmm.
identity and your value. So whether your value isn't based upon what you did in the past, or your value isn't based upon whether you can, climb up, stairs, or, what I'm saying, and things like that. You have to shift the focus on what really makes you valuable, and that's you. Who God created you to be. Like you said, you're unique. I believe everybody, has their own, God's given a unique personality. I think leading into that, because even when you acquire your disability, your personality, you still you. Just like the
Yeah.
physical you have changed, but you as a person hasn't changed. So, shifting the focus of value to not productivity, but based upon who did, God created you to be, like, uniquely, your personality, what can you do? If you can't, do whatever, what these can you do now with your new ability? But then also, like I said, to look at your personality and the type of personality God created you to be, and what can you do in this space now, and then, just like I said, be in prayer, having a good counsel of people around you, be in a good community of folks. That really helps too. Having,
Yes, it
a
does.
good, community of people who's really, their intent is to see you succeed, and they can see your inherently value, and see you for you. So it is a journey. It's not going to be right off the bat, or, you're going to get it instantly. But like I said,
Hmm.
just knowing that you have value, you still, have abilities, or you still have a great personality that's God given you, and how can you use that for His glory in the space that you're in right now.
Amen. And I appreciate that you brought out that it may not be an instantaneous thing, that for some people it's a process, and that it's okay that, maybe on day one, you're not just ready to jump out onto a platform and, speak from a loudspeaker or whatever have you, but that we can grow into this, with God and give ourselves grace in the meantime.
Exactly.
Um,
Exactly.
I like to
And a
say
great
too
community.
that, yes,
That's a great, and
community
find
is
a
so
good
important.
community.
Community is so important. It really, really is to have someone speaking the truth to you. I
Exactly.
believe that the enemy would love to isolate us because if he can get us off by ourselves, he's the only voice that we're hearing. But when we have good, solid community that has values that are alike to ours, then we get that reinforcement of the truth, and we can take that into our spirits. I like to say that the people who you're called to serve are looking for you. And so if you're trying to be someone else, they won't recognize you, right? And I know that you have been active in reaching out and being that beacon to those that you are called to. And so I would just love for you to update us and tell us what you're working on, what's next, how people can get in contact with you if they would like to, all the things.
Yes, yes, yes. So, what I have currently going on is I have two projects. I have Divas in the City digital series and soon to be Divas in the City TV digital platform. But Divas in the City is, follows five black women with physical disabilities taking their city by storm. So it's women across the country. We also are doing like different specials, like webinars and specials on the experiences of black and brown women with disabilities. And so you can check that out on all the socials, pretty much Instagram, Facebook, YouTube, at Divas in the City TV. Um, and then I also have a upcoming documentary called Autistic Out Loud, and it shows black autistic individuals and their families, how they fight for equality and inclusion in the space of right now, the shifting of the social and political of the second Trump administration. So showing how they continue to advocate and build that resilience in these times. And so, yeah, those are the two things. So you can find me at Tameka Citchens-Spruce. .com. That's my website, and also on LinkedIn and on Facebook. I'm very much, active on, and I'm also available to do workshops and trainings on inclusive leadership and also creating spaces of belonging. So, I could come in and talk more about that in churches or businesses, or some individuals want assistance in that.
Perfect. And we know that you have a lot to offer to this community, to the faith community overall, and just your lived experience is so rich and so robust. And I'm just grateful for you and others like you who are willing to speak up and to share what you've experienced so that others can have just some guidance, some point of reference, and even just have someone that they can relate to, that they can look at and say, okay, if she can do it, then there's hope for me, and there is a blueprint for my way forward to see how I can navigate this, especially through the lens of faith. I can definitely speak to the Divas in the City project. It is a fun watch. It is encouraging. It's uplifting. The Autistic Out Loud series, I've gotten a chance to peek into a couple of those Zoom meetings, and just to hear those stories. It's very telling. A lot of revelation and things that maybe if you are not neurodivergent or are not around someone who's neurodivergent, maybe you would not understand about that experience. And so it's definitely informative and educational and enriching. And so I encourage everyone to check her out. Tameka Citchens-Spruce, thank you so much for being with us today. We'd love to have you back anytime. Anytime you have something going on or anytime that you have something to share, we would love to have you back to share with this community. We appreciate your time. Thank you for being with us.
And thank you for inviting me.
Of course. And thanks to everybody for joining us. We'll see you next time on Living Chronic Faith Podcast. Hey, thanks so much for listening. If you want to stay up to date on what's happening in the LCF community, or for more faith-first chronic diagnosis content, please visit our website at livingchronicfaith.com. And while you're there, consider registering for membership free of charge. Also, check us out on Instagram and YouTube at Living Chronic Faith. Be sure to follow and subscribe. Remember that I'm praying for you. Yes, you. And until next time, always expect great things. Talk to you soon.